Hello and welcome back to my face and today's video. It's a bit of a different one if you normally watch my videos, but if you're new to the channel, I hope you like this kind of style. I'm going to be comparing World of Tanks to World of Tanks Blitz. I'm going to kind of discuss the nitty-gritty differences and kind of give you an overview of what World of Tanks as a genre kind of is. So, let's start with that. Let me introduce to you World of Tanks. World of Tanks as a genre is a tank battle simulator created by a game company called Wargaming, and them themselves describe it as an MMO featuring combat vehicles from the mid 20th century which fight in epic battles for overall victory. That's pretty accurate. It basically features tanks from World War One, World War Two, and a little bit after nowadays, and kind of pitches them against each other really in player versus player combat. It's quite exciting, it's quite enthralling, and if you're into kind of history, you might kind of enjoy it. If you've never heard of the genre, I hope I kind of introduced it to you, but if you know the genre and you kind of just want to know a little bit more about the differences between World of Tanks Blitz and World of Tanks, I'm here to tell you them. So, let's start with the major difference. What they're played on. World of Tanks is exclusively played on PC and can only be played on PC, whereas World of Tanks Blitz, wide variety. You can play it on anything from a PlayStation to an Xbox, a mobile phone, tablet to a Nintendo Switch. But most importantly, World of Tanks Blitz can also be played on PC, just to make it all a little bit more confusing for you. But the difference is World of Tanks is exclusively PC, World of Tanks Blitz is a wide variety. So, secondly, the difference is kind of more convoluted. We're going to go into the nitty gritty stuff now, basically. The difference between World of Tanks and World of Tanks Blitz is World of Tanks has 15 versus 15 games on 1 kilometer squared maps, and World of Tanks Blitz has 7 versus 7 games on 0.36 kilometer maps. This is down to a number of reasons. Probably the most large one is what they're played on. Like as we just discussed, World of Tanks Blitz can be played on a phone all the way up to a computer. So they have to design the game to be able to be played on a phone. So that's why the smaller maps, that's why the smaller kind of games with only 14 players, 7 versus 7. Whereas World of Tanks is able to be played on PC, so they can kind of get away with larger maps, more players. Basically, that's the kind of difference. Thirdly, this is an interesting difference, and it's the support available for newer players. And it's something that I feel World of Tanks miss out on. World of Tanks Blitz have this awesome system where for up to your first 500 games, you're going to be mostly playing against AI and bots, which kind of brings down the learning curve. And even World of Tanks Blitz is still quite a hard game to get to grips with, but having those kind of earlier experiences be a lot more simple fighting against AI and bots rather than real players allows you to learn the major mechanics before you start fighting as real players. Whereas World of Tanks doesn't really have that. They have a boot camp, which is basically a tutorial, and once you've done that, you're very quickly into random games where you're fighting against random real life players, which makes that learning curve a hell of a lot steeper, and it's something you have to overcome if you want to keep pushing and keep progressing in World of Tanks. Something to consider if you're weighing it up between the two. Do you want an easier learning experience, or do you want a deeper game experience? That's basically the two you have to compare for that. Another difference, which is quite an important one actually, is the type, the classification of the combat vehicles within the two games. They have similarities and one major difference. In both World of Tanks and World of Tanks Blitz, there are heavy tanks, medium tanks, light tanks, and tank destroyers, with one large difference being in World of Tanks there is artillery as another class, but that is not in World of Tanks Blitz, and I repeat, not in World of Tanks Blitz. So if you've played World of Tanks and you don't like artillery, maybe Blitz is the game for you. You still get that World of Tanks experience minus the artillery. And for those who've never played World of Tanks before, let me introduce artillery to you. They sit at the back of a map, they get like a Hawkeye kind of view of the map, and they just click you. And you can't do anything to them, you can't spot them, you can't shoot them because they can hide behind a building, that's an issue. And there are ways to mitigate it, don't get me wrong, but they're irritating and are annoying. So if you don't like that, Blitz might be the game for you. But that is probably the major difference between the two games in terms of the vehicle classifications. Is Blitz is just missing one altogether. So this is slightly more of like a unique difference between the two. World of Tanks has a hell of a lot more of a developed clan system. You know, you see clan systems in all kind of games now, from Clash of Clans to Raid Shadow Legends. They all have clans. And World of Tanks does it well, very well. They have entire international communities have formed around this clan system. And there's regular clan events held for in-game and real-life monetary rewards. And in the past, they had a really developed esports scene from about 2014 to about 2018. They had a really developed esports scene with hundreds of thousands of euros in prizes and people being flown out all over the world to compete in leagues and tournaments. It was really developed and it was really cool. But unfortunately, that did end in 2018. And recently, Blitz has had their own foray into esports. And from what I can understand, it didn't quite go as well as they expected it to. But if you're looking for that kind of community aspect from Acclaim, so if you played World of Warcraft or similar stuff to that, you might be able to find that in World of Tanks, because it is there and there is a clan out for everyone, from Polish to Czechoslovakian to English to American. They're all out there. So that's another thing to consider. But I feel like this is the major difference. I have left the big one to last, right? It's graphics. When you compare the two games, World of Tanks is so much richer and more developed than World of Tanks Blitz. And that's a relatively obvious reason. World of Tanks Blitz has got to run on a phone. World of Tanks only runs on a PC. They have so much more processing power to be able to work with. And the developers know that and they work with that. You've just got to look at some of the detail on some of the maps in World of Tanks Blitz, and you compare that to some of the maps in World of Tanks, even the older maps in World of Tanks. They've been updated and they are so much more rich and more developed nowadays. And if you're looking for that in a game, you look for a beautiful game, look at World of Tanks. Don't get me wrong, there are some beautiful, really, really cool skins and really, really cool maps in World of Tanks Blitz. But it's just to a next level in World of Tanks, just because the developers just get that freedom to work with extra processing power, knowing that their only limitation is the minimum requirements to run the game, and people can always run it on the lowest possible settings, whereas on World of Tanks Blitz they have to consider the limitations of a Nintendo Switch, an Xbox, a PlayStation, a mobile phone, a tablet. There are so many more limitations for them to be able to develop skins and maps and similar kind of visual aspects. So, to kind of conclude, the two games are very similar but very different. If you're looking for fast-paced gameplay and fast progression, World of Tanks Blitz is the game for you. So if you have a short attention span, maybe look at World of Tanks Blitz. But if you're into that slower pace, more in-game depth kind of gameplay, look at World of Tanks, because you're going to have that more visually appealing game, that more slower paced gameplay. So if you're into that, maybe consider World of Tanks. It's often referred to the old man's FPS. It isn't an FPS, but it's quite often referred to as that because of the slower paced gameplay. But if you're into that kind of more first person shooters, maybe consider, I don't know, World of Tanks Blitz. It might be a little bit more fast paced and keep you engaged a little bit more. So, I hope you enjoyed this kind of video. It's a lot different to what I'm ever used to. I'm not too confident talking to a camera, so if I looked awkward, please don't. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you kind of now understand some of the major differences between World of Tanks and World of Tanks Blitz a bit more, whether you're a Blitz player wanting to learn more about tanks or vice versa, or completely new to the genre. I hope you know a little bit more about it now. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any more questions or you want to know any more information, or if I've missed anything major, please tell me in the comments. Please ask me in the comments and I'll be sure to respond and maybe release an updated version in a year or so's time. We'll see. But yeah, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I'm pushing for 500 subscribers by the end of this year, so it'd be really, really nice if you could join in and say hello. But yeah, I will see you all very soon. Bye.